You're live.
Hello, my name is Elizabeth Weiss. I'm the Federal Treasurer of Socialist Action, a member of the NDP Socialist Caucus Steering Committee. We acknowledge that we are hosting this event on Indigenous lands across Turtle Island, known as North America. That includes the unceded territories of the Mississauga of the New Credit, the Windot, and Haudenosaunee people in the place called Toronto. Today, I'm speaking to you from Jamaica, where the indigenous Taino and Arawak speaking people began arriving here 4,000 years ago, but were wiped out by European colonial powers. We join in the fight for justice, recognizing that there can be no real reconciliation without restitution. That entails seizing the assets of the big resource corporations and returning them to the commons. Tonight's webcast is titled Why India's Farmers Are in Revolt. The main presenter is Garv Tanyajot, with discussants Navi Aujla and Harshill Dhingra and Panchali Kar. Garv will speak for about 25 minutes. Navi, Harshill, and Panchali will speak up to 7 minutes each. Then we will take speakers. We will take questions from our online audience that they can access the website directly from YouTube and type the questions into the chat. They can direct their questions if they so wish to one panelist or to all. Please subscribe to the Socialist Action YouTube channel. If you agree with what you hear during this program, please join Socialist Action by signing up to our website, www.socialistaction.ca, or by calling 647-986-197. Easy to remember, folks. 1917 was the year of the Russian Revolution. So let's begin. Garv Tanyajot is an economics undergrad student from India and is studying the economics of ecology and conservation at York University. He is a member of Socialist Action in Toronto. So please, warm welcome for Garv.
Thank you, Elizabeth. I really appreciate being called here to speak, and I thank you all for joining in, especially Panchali, who's joining us all the way from India at this very early hour. I think we all agree that we have seen India is undergoing tremendous changes right now. Both the farmers and the workers are protesting all over the country. Farmers have been protesting in India against 3 ordinances that were passed by the ruling BJP party. They were passed without any deliberation or debate in the parliament under the cover of COVID-19. And these bills are very problematic for the farmers, as I'm going to explain later why. Indian farmers have been in distress for quite some time now. In the early 90s, when Indian economy was first opened for foreign investments in what is now called economic liberalization, many foreign companies like Monsanto and DuPont started pushing modified seeds and chemical fertilizers onto the farmers market. Those things initially did bring about better yield and more profit to the farmers. But as chemical fertilizers do, it chipped away from the nutrients in the soil, made it weak. That led to a vicious cycle of farmers depending on more chemical fertilizers that did more damage to their soil. To pay for that, farmers now at large needed to take out debt for the loans from the banks, and that loan would keep on increasing and yield could keep on decreasing. This led to a suicide crisis among the farmers in India. According to National Crime Record Bureau, about 140,000 farmers have committed suicide to avoid paying debt. So for most of these farmers, minimum support price, MSP, is the only thing that keeps them afloat. The 3 ordinances that I mentioned before, they don't directly include canceling MSP or the APMC, which is Agriculture Produce Market Committee, commonly known as Mandi system, where MSP is implemented. They don't directly cancel it out. What it does is it creates a separate market that would run parallel to the APMC Mandi system. So whenever a buyer goes in a Mandi system, they have to pay 4 to 6% extra, which is a tax on them. That tax goes towards the regulation and operation of APMC, and MSP, which is the price set by the government for any produce any farmer needs to sell. So it is kind of a minimum wage system for farmers. Now that this bill would allow for a separate open market to operate, many of the buyers and most of the corporations would naturally go for the open market, where they have to pay at least 4 to 6% less. That would mean eventually, given enough time, APMC, Mandi system, and minimum support price is going to wither out and die. Most farmers understand that. Farmers understand these bills are going to take away the last lifeline they have in the agriculture industry. These ordinances also include clause for contract farming, which would see giant corporations dictate terms on how the farmers should use their lands. And because most farmers in India own and operate small to medium sized farms, they cannot compete against the corporations, and they will have to adhere to those terms. That you could understand that as a modern day return to feudalism, or Indian version of it, which is zamindari system. If that wasn't egregious enough, there's another clause in those ordinances that denies the farmers their right to take their grievances to the court system. What they are allowed to do is go to a district magistrate, a local district magistrate, who are not really reliable, who are not really the friend of the vulnerable, to say the least. All these things terribly scare Indian farmers, and that's why they have gathered and they have blocked 9 out of 10 entrances to Delhi on Delhi-Haryana border. Ever since that started happening back in November, Indian mainstream media's coverage of these protests have ranged from either non-existent to completely atrocious. For longest time, they completely ignored the plight of the farmers. And when it became obvious, when the farmers gathered near the borders and they started agitating, when it became difficult to ignore them, mainstream media started hurling labels at them like Khalistani, separatists, terrorists, and at the same time they blame them of being under the influence of foreign nationals or opposition party. And diametrically opposite to that, at the same time they claim that these are rural simpletons who just don't understand how good these policies would be for them. So they have been slinging labels all over the place to see what hits and what sticks with the Indian public. But so far, it has not worked. As far as I can tell, Indian public is way more sympathetic towards the farmers' plight than they are towards the government. And to counter this atrocious, terrible news coverage, farmers have started their own newspapers. They have started their own media channels, like YouTube channel, other platform like Facebook IDs, Instagram, stuff like that, to directly connect to the people out there. So the physical newspapers are distributed among the protesters, and the digital copies are available for anyone who can go on their website and download. Because farmers have a lot of time on their hand while protesting, so they have also created many libraries where you'll find revolutionary books about socialism and what needs to be done in revolt to the government. Largest of these libraries is named after Bhagat Singh, who is a Marxist-Leninist revolutionary from Punjab. There have been 7 rounds of talks, all of them completely inconsequential. On December 30th, government did come out and say that they have accepted two of the demands from the farmers, but it later turned out that those demands are of very of very low value to the farmers and were not of priority, had nothing to do with the APMC Mandi system and the MSP, which farmers are fighting to protect. Government has now made it very clear that they are not going to back away. And farmers also have, many farmers on many different occasions have claimed that they are going to fight till the very end. So it has now become a battle. It didn't have to be. It could have been a compromise, but it's now a political battle. Only one party, with either the farmers or the government, could come out victor here. So some few more things about these, the structure of these protests. As far as I can tell, and from what I have read, these are fully democratic. People vote on what to do with the resources they have and how to go about the talks. They elect their own representatives who then go on and talk to the farmers. Farm protests have prepared themselves for longevity. They have come prepared with makeshift homes, electric generators, stuff they need for cooking, blankets, and everything. So they can stay there as long as possible. Also, farmers have created committees back home in villages or their towns who would send more people as some people protesting would come back. So there always will be people farming and providing for their families back home. And at the same time, there will be continuous agitation on the border. So far, because of the inaction of the government, farmers are getting very frustrated. I mean, even I am getting frustrated just looking at it. But the slow progression or inaction from the government is egregious. It's for the farmers. So farmers all over the country have taken their anger towards the major oligarchs of the country, which is namely Mukesh Ambani and Gautam Adani, two of the richest people in India who are very close to the ruling party. Both Mr. Ambani and Mr. Adani have benefited directly from the privatization frenzy that BJP has undertaken, the ruling party. So farmers, there have been news across India that farmers have been demolishing cell phone towers owned by Reliance, which is operated and owned by Mr. Ambani, the biggest oligarch in India. It is easy to discard or call these protests as only anti-BJP or anti-Modi. They are, but they're also anti-neoliberalism, because many of the farmers' unions belong to the communist school of thought in India. Also, unions have largely ignored and denied help from the main opposition party, which is Indian National Congress, which is also another neoliberal capitalist party. It's just BJP light, you can say. Even though farmers have denied them any help or assistance in this movement, and a truly able opposition party would still take advantage of a situation like this. But Indian National Congress has largely been absent from the whole thing. One of their leaders, Rahul Gandhi, who is seen as more of a cartoonish figure in Indian politics, and for good reason, while India has been going through this tremendous change, this very important moment in decades, Rahul Gandhi has been vacationing in Milan, Italy, and tweeting from there in support of farmers. So completely incompetent leadership from the opposition, and have completely lost all credibility in eyes of the farmers and of the protesters. Mr. Modi, Prime Minister Modi and his party BJP, they understand this very well. They understand that they have no opposition on the national level. They know on the regional scale, in local elections and state elections, there are regional parties who could challenge their might, fight them, and win elections against them. But on the national level, there really isn't anyone. Indian National Congress has been completely decimated in last two elections. And under the leadership of Nehru Gandhi family and Rahul Gandhi, that doesn't seem to change anytime soon. So you can see it's very different from the political dynamic in in North America, in USA or Canada. According to historian Vijay Prashad, he made a very good point when he said, in North America, you have really a strong political infrastructure. You have two parties or multiple parties who can challenge each other's might, but they don't have a ground network or activists, or they don't have, and none of the parties have any values to fight for. In India, you have huge networks of activists, ground support for them, who are ready to agitate, who can stop the country at a moment's notice. It's all available in India, but they don't have political infrastructure to take that rage, take that anger, and turn it into policy. That's missing in India. So far, BJP and the farmers are in a dreadlock completely. As I said, it has now become an egotistical thing with the party, because there were some news that some of the ministers have talked to farmer unions, and they've said that they are ready to make the ordinances so hollow that they're close to useless, but they want to keep them on books. Farmers understand that these ordinances, if they stay on books, they can be used in the future, and they may not be able to organize immediately to stop that from happening. So one reason I think why this is so difficult for the ruling party to back off on this is because Mr. Modi has created an image for himself, which is he is the protector or the fighter for corporate India. He'll make anything happen in name of development. And if he can't deliver this, if he can't manage small inconvenience, if you will, to the public in this way, then he's of no use. He loses credibility, and that's the only reason why they are in power right now. So far, 40 to 46 people have died during these protests, depending on which source you listen to. And not a single name has been mentioned in mainstream media. It has not been acknowledged by the government. So it is very clear. The desperation of the farmers is very clear by the fact that one of the people who died actually committed suicide in protest. So farmers are desperate. They are ready to fight for it till they die. And as far as I can see, the government doesn't look like they're going to back off. So the last thing that I'll add is this is a very crucial moment for India. This could go in many different directions. But wherever we go from here, it doesn't look like the government, BJP-ruled government, comes out looking good here. Because they've already lost control of the situation. They've already lost many people. And their inaction is going to cause more deaths, and there'll be blood on their hands. Too late is as good as not doing anything here. So that being said, I think the way these protests have been organized, global left can learn a lot from them. This could be a model to fight neoliberalism around the world, austerity and capitalism around the world. And for that, we need to support the farmers and give them our full attention. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Comrade Taneja. So our next speaker is Navi Aujla. She is a community engagement coordinator with Convene Toronto. She volunteered with the Workers' Action Center and helped to organize solidarity with India's farmers in revolt via the Brampton Action Coalition. So welcome, Navi.
Hi, thank you for having me. And thank you, Garv, for giving such a great overview of what's happening right now. I'm going to try not to be too repetitive and bring in some new information. But as he mentioned, the farmers movement in India is making history right now. It's one of the largest protests in the world. And, more than 65% of people depend on agriculture in India. And yet Indian agriculture has been in crisis for a long time. And as Garv mentioned, thousands of farmers commit suicide each year. This is not a profitable business for many of the farmers, but it's a way of life, and they're struggling for their livelihood. So as we know, a few months ago, the Indian government forcibly passed these 3 new laws. No consultations were done with farmers or the unions, and the opposing parties were actually silenced as well. So the process was very undemocratic. And on top of that, it was also unconstitutional because agriculture and related trade doesn't fall under the jurisdiction of the federal government, but rather it's under state purview. So these laws are in favor of large corporations, and they're definitely going to hurt small farmers. And more than 85% of farmers in India have less than 5 acres of land. So as Garv mentioned, right now farmers sell their crops in state mandis, which are regulated by the government and where they get a guaranteed minimum support price on some of the crops that they sell, which, as you mentioned, is kind of like a minimum wage, or it helps ensure that farmers get at least, some sort of living from their crops. Outside of the mandi system, in which this parallel kind of market is being created, corporations will not have to pay taxes on crops. So they're definitely trying to push folks into that direction. And the taxes that are, enforced in the mandi system are used to kind of go back to communities and create infrastructure. So that'll no longer be there. There is no minimum support price when it comes to, the other set of market. And what's believed will happen is that corporations will initially pay a higher price than what farmers would find at the mandi, and then use this as an excuse to eventually phase out the mandi system. And MSP, which is already not guaranteed by law, would also then be phased out. So after this, corporations will be able to exploit farmers by paying much lower prices. And this is what we've seen has happened in other states where this sort of system has come into place, is that while maybe initially farmers were given higher prices, now they are making much less for selling those crops, and they've actually lost their land and have had to move to other states to become day laborers. And so that's kind of where farmers can see that these laws are taking them. In addition, the Food Corporation of India, that's an organization that's created and run by the government of India. What they do is procure food grains from the farmers in states where production is in surplus and store them in government granaries. And then these grains are distributed to deficit areas and among the poorer folks in India at a lower price. So now the government has actually made a 30-year contract with Adani Agro Limited to store 1 million tons of agricultural product per year on behalf of the government over 30 years. For every ton the corporation will store, the government will pay 2,000 per ton per year. So we can see that this is just trying to privatize the whole agricultural sector, including the purchase and storage of agricultural produce. In addition, corporations will be allowed to hoard crops and sell them later at a high price. So before these laws, there were actually limits on how much people could hoard and store crops, but now though these laws remove any sort of limit. And so this will allow corporations to hoard crops for years at a time if they'd like, creating a shortage, and then spike prices for everyday people trying to buy food. As Garv mentioned, these new laws also allow corporations to make direct contracts with small farmers where there's a lot of unequal bargaining power. So small farmers will have a hard time understanding complicated legal contracts, but also fighting back in cases where corporations don't stick to their word. And so we've already seen in other states or around India, for example, Uttar Pradesh, where farmers directly sold sugar canes to privately owned mills, and they still haven't been paid fully for those. And it's been years that they've been fighting for this struggle to get paid. So the government has agreed to make amendments to these laws. As Garv mentioned, they're very hollow and not meaningful, but the unions want them to repeal all 3 laws, and they refuse to settle for anything less than that. So close to 1 million farmers have gathered around the capital of Delhi, blocked all the entrances to the capital. Today, there was a tractor rally in Delhi with over 200,000 tractors. And the big action that's coming up is going to be on January the 26th, which is Republic Day in India, the day that the Indian Constitution came into effect. So every year, this is a big celebration in India where there's a huge parade showcasing India's army, navy, air forces. A lot of cultures are showcased. And so millions usually attend this parade. But this year on the 26th now, the farmers will be entering Delhi peacefully to host their own tractor parade if the 3 laws are not repealed by then. And they have said that the tractor rally today was just a trailer of what will happen on the 26th. And so this moment will be truly significant as millions are expected to be part of this rally. And it's very possible that the state will escalate violence against protesters to try to stop them. And so what also makes this movement so special right now in India is that the government has consistently used religion and caste to divide people. And so millions have been killed by state-induced riots and violence based on religion and caste and other sorts of divisions. And so right now the farmers and other workers and communities have done a great job of staying united despite so many attempts by the government to try and divide them. As Gaurav mentioned, some of the tactics, whether it's using religion and calling them terrorists and extremists or other sorts of things. And so they're doing a spectacular job of staying united and fighting back against all the kind of dirty tactics that the government uses to try and spread lies and distrust and, kind of fake news. And so this movement has gained international attention, and it's unique in also the fact that, like Garv mentioned, that workers and farmers are making the link that this is not just about a party, but it's about, exposing big corporations and capitalism and what it does to the working class. And so that is, an amazing thing that's coming about, this building of a working class consciousness and the refusal to be divided. And I just also wanted to add before I wrap up that it's amazing to see the international support as well. So even here in the Greater Toronto area, we're seeing hundreds and thousands at times of people coming out to support and protest, and also making those same links of not just this being about a political party, but about corporations and exploitation of the working class. And so what I'm seeing that's new is so many youth, so many folks that have never really been politically engaged before, paying attention and sharing this on their social media and coming out to protest. And so it's just such a great moment. And I think one that we should learn from and also make sure that we do everything we can to support the farmers, but also how do we take this moment and continue to create those connections between what's happening and the way folks are feeling and connecting with this issue, and allowing them to see that this is a global struggle and that it's interconnected with so many other things. And how can we bring all these new folks that are now paying attention and coming out and building them into the movement and getting them to be more active and kind of continuing to raise this consciousness that's coming about. And one of the things that I think we can really be doing is to also help create media attention that's not occurring internationally. So within our own, Canadian news mainstream, we're barely seeing any coverage of this, which is
30 seconds.
Thank you. Which is shocking, given that it's such a huge protest and so important. And so I think that's one thing that we can really try and do from our end over here. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Navi. Next is our discussant, Harshill Dhingra. He is a student at Humber College, also from India. He's most interested in issues relating to current affairs and poverty. He is a member of Socialist Action. Welcome, Harshill.
Thank you, Elizabeth, for having me. Thank you so much. First of all, I just wanted to say that Gaurav and Navi explained the whole thing, the whole issue very well. And similarly, I won't be too repetitive.
Your camera is not on. Do you wish to have it that way?
It should be on.
Well, maybe it is there you are. You're on now. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, so I just wanted to say that they presented the whole issue very well and explained the whole thing. And I won't be too repetitive again. So I just wanted to say that Milton Friedman, one of the free market economists, he said that change occurs only in a time of crisis. And 2020 is a year that is very synonymous with the word crisis. And the BJP government tried to unleash its economic ideology in this time. So the mental and the financial and the economic trauma of the people had of the country, the BJP government passed so many laws in this time, passed so many neoliberal laws in this time, that people can't act at this time. So there have been many labor laws, farmer laws, and Naomi Klein calls this a disaster capitalism. And the worst thing is that these laws, they come in the name of reform for the common folks, for the poor people, is that their living standards will improve, but what they are basically is just simple exploitation in the name of reforms and sophisticated acts and ordinances. So they have explained how the farm laws were passed in a very undemocratic way. The opposition wasn't allowed to speak. The Rajya Sabha TV was censored, and it had something to do with the voice vote, but then they couldn't get into a standard vote. So they've explained that. And about the acts, about the farm laws, it's three things: the essential commodity acts,
Okay, I think we may have lost contact, Kurt. Is anything you can do from your end?
No, we have to just wait for it to clear up. So hopefully, what I think we should do is move on to our next speaker, and when his connection gets better, we'll finish his portion.
Okay, we will do that. Okay, so our next discussant is Panchali Kar, who is talking to us from all the way in India, which there is the wee hours of the morning. We are so pleased to have their participation. They work as a gender rights activist and an intersectional feminist. Panchali was physically present at the Singhu border protests for 3 days to extend solidarity to the farmers' movement. So a warm welcome, Panchali.
Is on. Thank you so much. And it's a pleasure to be here, to be a part of this discussion. And it's a pleasure to see how internationally the issue has been discussed. And if the speakers who have spoken till now, Navi, Garv, and everybody, they have already highlighted why is this an issue? Why is this Farmers Acts a problem? I would like to talk about what BJP stands for and how this Farmers Acts, all these are affecting the minority amongst the farmers as well, like the farmers who are the caste minority and the women farmers. So if we look at what BJP stands for, BJP stands against the minority as a whole. So the religion card that BJP plays all the time, it's the Hindu-Muslim thing. It's this atrocity is created. This is created in a way so that people, they engage amongst themselves over the religion thing. They fight amongst themselves. They are manufacturing riots. They are manufacturing lynchings. They're manufacturing laws like right now, love jihad thing is on, where a Muslim person marrying a Hindu person would be ostracized, which is extremely problematic, extremely undemocratic. So all these things, why do they do that? Why do they always target one of the minority communities, be it the caste, be it the religion mostly, and be it gender as well? Because while people are busy in fighting amongst themselves, what they do is they sell off the country to the corporates and to the private investors. So while we are debating over the religious issues, because we do not have an option, when we are seeing that the religious minorities are being butchered right, left, and center, of course, we'll have to talk about it. So while we are engaging over these issues, what's happening is that there are several businessmen, like business tycoons, who are taking huge loans from the government banks, and they are eloping. They are like leaving the country just like that. So it's the public money that they are taking away, and the BJP government has their back. So that is one issue. And the other issue is that right now what the BJP government has targeted is that the farmers and the working class people, the laborers, there is labor code which is coming up, and which is, we are also talking about that, which is taking away the rights of the working class people, like the 8 hours of working hours per day, and several other factors are there which will be taken away, which will be scrapped if these laws are implemented. And talking about this farmer bills which have become act as of now, so what happens is that it is a huge problematic what would I say, huge problematic stance for the farmers, especially the farmers who do not have acres of lands and who are the small farmers. And if I talk especially about the marginal community amongst the farmers, say the caste minorities or the women farmers, according to the data which is available, 73% of the rural women who earn a livelihood earn from farming related job. However, less than 13% of the women farmers have their own land. And these farmers who are the landless farmers, 81% of the landless women farmers belong to the caste minorities. In Indian terms, they are Dalit, Bahujan, Adivasis. To make you understand, they are like scheduled castes, scheduled tribes, and indigenous peoples, and the OBC people as well. So what happens if these acts are implemented? Right now, we have this APMC and the Mandi system, which has already been explained. Very honestly, this has not been very woman-friendly, because there are middlemen, there are coolies, the porters, there are like different people who needs to negotiate. While selling it to the APMC, the farmers need to negotiate the cost, which is either MSP or above that. So the women farmers have never been very comfortable in the system, which is predominantly occupied by the men, and it is a little patriarchal as well. If we talk about the system currently, yes, there are private buyers, there are private organizations that buy. However, because of this APMC and because of this MSP system, they have to follow this. Even there are women farmers who sell it to the private people. There is this APMC who set up this minimum selling price, and everybody has to abide by this. So while we incorporate these new acts, this MSP system would die out. Because if the farmers are going into this free market and going into agreement with the corporations, the MSP system would not be there anymore. So while the corporates exploit, the exploitation would go more on the people who are at the marginal level. So the women farmers, they would be at the receiving end of this oppression. Also, if we look at chemical induced farming, which Gar was talking about a while back, so with chemical induced farming, what happened is that the fertility of the land had gone down, the yield had gone down, and to produce crops on that particular field, we needed more fertilizers and more chemicals, and it was more pricey, and there was huge loans. As a result of that, suicides happened, and the woman who were dependent on the people who were farming, the farmers of the family, they were at the receiving end of this oppression. They were like left with no option to die, because of course there was no income in the family. So the corporations have already not been woman friendly. What this government says is that since the APMC and the mandis are not woman friendly, these corporations would be a good place for the woman to place their bid. But that is not true, because the marginal people, the woman, especially the women who are from the caste marginal communities, they do not have access to technology. So if there is enam markets where which will be the major selling points, these women do not have access to technology. They do not have enough education, and there is a huge power disparity between the woman and the marginal farmers and the corporations. So the corporates dictating the terms would be the ones on which the every kind of the whatever deals is being sealed. So the woman farmers, the marginal farmers, the farmers with less amount of land, the landless farmers, they would not have a huge say in these deals which are being sealed up with the corporates. So it is a losing proposition for the people who are at the receiving end of these acts, the farmers' acts. Also, talking about this Essential Commodity Act, because of this Essential Commodity Act, the food grains would be hoarded by the corporations to any extent, because there would be no upper limit to which the corporations can hoard the food grains. So after production, because the corporates are holding everything, they are at the superior position related to the farmers. What if they hoard the entire food grains to their godowns and create an artificial demand? And because of that artificial demand, they can sell their products at a higher price. How would the people, the common people, the working class people, the people who are the lower class and the lower middle class, even the middle class people, how would they be able to afford the basic staples? When we talk about MSP, there are like 24 crops under MSP. However, lentils and the oil grains are not included in the MSP. So in the target should be to make this APMC mandis more woman friendly and more marginal farmers friendly, rather than discarding them, and also to include pulses and oil grains under MSP. So that is how it will be a more inclusive space for the people who are in marginal, but they earn their livelihood from farming, and that will also impact the GDP of the country in a very positive way. So that is what the farmers are fighting for, and they are fighting tooth and nail. And they said that the good thing is that even the farmers who are well-to-do, who have a lot of land and all that, they also understand the crisis very well. They do not think that the crisis belongs to the small farmers and the landless farmers. So there is a huge equality. There is a huge comradeship. And as I was there at the spot of the protest, I can see the comradeship which was there. Nobody was trying to be a leader on their own. It was a movement of everybody. And it was a very inclusive, safe space, which is a rare thing to see. So we are hopeful that this will yield something positive for the people, for the farmers, and against BJP that particularly stands against the people of the country.
Thank you so much, Panchali. Okay, so now we're going to go back to Harshill, who had some technical problems, and he will finish his presentation. He probably won't be on camera this time, but we will be able to hear him.
Thanks, Elizabeth, again. Panchali made some very good points, and I just wanted to say that this whole issue, this whole neoliberal policy, they have been implemented in the state of Bihar in 2006, and if we study the figures from that point on till now, the farmers' net income on average has gone down a lot, and it's not just income that has gone down. Even the standards of living have gone down, which should be the real estimate. In 2010, a state committee was formed to assess these policies, the impact of the policies, and they just basically said it was a failed experiment. And I'll quote from the report: complete deregulation of markets in the states has actually increased transaction costs rather than reducing it, and it has not helped in attracting any investment from the private sector. So the whole BJP issue is that their argument is basically that economic development will be through intensive investment, especially by foreign people. especially by foreign companies. That's called foreign direct investments. But the state commission, the state committee, in their report, they have just outright dismissed it. They have studied it a lot, studied all the figures, and that's how they all the previous farmers from Bihar, they are left unemployed, so they migrated to Punjab, where they work as migrant laborers, daily wage laborers. Food is not guaranteed, income isn't guaranteed, and they're almost treated as second class citizens. It's because they come from the people in Punjab. They think that they're basically trying to steal their work by coming into their state, but it's not like that. As a farmers in Bihar, as a farmer in Bihar, have suffered tremendous exploitation. And then they say there is a need for an appropriate legal and institutional structure with a developmental type of regulation to ensure orderly functioning of agriculture markets and attract investment for infrastructure development in such states. So no doubt there is a problem with the existing agriculture system in India, but the reform that should have been taken, it should have been in another direction. The government could have invested in more services, especially for the small and medium farmers. They could have built better infrastructure, provided them loans with low interest rates. But what they have tried to do is that make it easy for the corporates, and that is a very intentional process, as we can see from the past 6 years. Secondly, some things about the
1 minute.
Something about the level of inequality in India. 1% of Indian population owns 73% of the wealth. Also, the pay ratio between the worker and the CEOs, it's Hero Motor Corporation has 700, and the CEO of Hero Motor Corporation owns 752 times more than an average worker in the company. And all companies exhibit this pattern, especially the top companies, the Nifty 50 companies. It's the ratio ranges from 750, 600, 500, 400, and the workers we are talking about, they are the formal workers. And in India, the formal workforce is only 10% of the total workforce. So we can imagine the daily life of the informal workers, and how their income is so significantly different from the owners. The billionaires' wealth increased by 35% in just 2020. And at the same time, India ranks 130 at the Human Development Index.
30 seconds, Harshill.
Out of 190 countries, India ranks 130 at the Human Developmental Index, while at the same time, the Indian billionaires' wealth increased by 35%, and now it stands at $485 billion US. That's it from me.
Okay, thank you very much, Harshill. Okay, so now we're going to go to our producer for the questions, and we've got more questions added. So I think we have something like 9 maybe questions now. So we're going to try and do them 3, 3, and 2. And you will get up to 5 minutes each to answer 1, 2, 3. It's up to you. And the lineup of speakers will be Navi, Harshill, Panchali, and Garth. Okay, so Kurt, the questions. First 3 questions.
Okay. So our first question comes from Barry Weisletter. He asked, the meaningful alternative to the reactionary and repressive rule of Narendra Modi of the BJP cannot be the National Congress Party of the liberal capitalists, or even the reformist CPIM. What are the prospects for Revolutionary Worker Farmer Alliance to challenge the dead-end capitalist rule, which is ruining food production and the fate of the rural toilers? Tejveer Singh asks, why government decided to bring up these rules only on these times when the whole country is suffering due to COVID? And Mark Kozatsky asks, can you comment on the role of Naxalites? And he's directing that to all the panelists.
Okay, so there we go, Navi. Up to 5 minutes, and I will keep everybody to their times.
Great, I can take a crack. What is really unique, as I mentioned previously, about this protest is the way that different groups have come together to actually work in alliance and not be divided. And so I think even among the left in India, there's been a lot of division in terms of how to do things. And so what's amazing is that they're not being divided this time, or that there's a lot more unity than usual. And so that gives hope that there is alternatives of groups coming together and there being an option or a solution outside of kind of a political party. And so I think that's what's very inspiring about this movement, is just the way that, before in the past, we've really seen kind of movements fall apart where, folks that have kind of the same intentions or they're fighting against the same injustices haven't been able to agree on the methods or that sort of thing. And so that I think that's what's really, really unique and very, very inspiring. And hopefully they can continue to do what they're doing and to stay united the way they are. And like Panchali said that she saw, and what we're seeing just sitting here from the videos and stuff is just the amazing sense of community and solidarity that's being created amongst different religions, among different left types groups. And so, yeah, again, just really hoping that they can continue building on that, and it really gives hope for kind of a different radical solution to fighting back against capitalist rule. Why the government decided to bring these rules when the country is suffering due to COVID, because that is how they were trying to get away with it. So definitely, I think that's what capitalists do, and somebody mentioned disaster capitalism before. So really trying to take advantage of the situation, in my opinion, and the fact that they didn't allow for any kind of consultations on this. They silenced other parties. I think it was really pushed through in a way that was meant to be kind of, how can we as quickly and quietly do this? But I think they were shocked to see the response by farmers and could not have anticipated such a big movement. And I think even now they're trying not to kind of take it back, but I think farmers are doing an amazing job and are going to force like something. So whether it's a revolution or, taking back the laws is yet to be seen. And I'm not sure I'm able to answer that final question, so I'll leave it to some of the other panelists. Thanks.
Okay, let's see. Harshill, go ahead, Harshill. 5 minutes.
To be honest, I'm not very well versed in the history and the role of the Naxalites. I just know that they were formed in the 1960s when, due to it was an inevitable formation of them due to the exploitation and the harshness suffered. What they're doing right now is that they're showing solidarity with the farmers who are protesting. But the problem is that the Indian media, any kind of dissenter of the current government, the Indian media shows them as Naxal, and the meaning denoted with the word Naxal is almost someone that is a terrorist. So yes, they are showing solidarity and great solidarity, and they have a very good population and supporter base. But that's located mostly in the rural sections. So unless the small parties in the villages can convince the central government to act in some way. If they have more coalition, if they have more support, and they can convince the central government in some way, then probably we can see a real change by them.
Okay, thank you, Harshill. Okay, Panchali?
Hi. I would start with Tejri's question that why in this time? Because this is the cream time, this is the peak time. What happened is that when these bills were introduced and the farmers started walking towards Delhi, there was a huge brigade of police. They stopped the farmers and they said that you cannot go in such big numbers. This is COVID time. So somebody from the farmers, he replied, you, the policemen, you also came in huge numbers. How is that possible? So because of this COVID and because of the houses, the legislation houses are closed, these bills could be passed so easily without any opposition. And because of COVID, we are still able to now at this point of time protest and stuff. But at any point of time, the government can say that this is a place from where COVID is spreading and stop stuff. So COVID is a tool which the government is using from the very beginning, not just for this bill, but for everything. For everything. For COVID, protests and everything was stopped. However, inauguration of Ram Mandir did not stop. However, Delhi riot did not stop. So COVID has been used as a tool to oppress the people by the government. Coming to Barry's question, yes, the reformists and the neoliberals are not the best people to help these agitation which is going on. It is not just a protest, it's a revolution that is going on at Singhu border and also at Tikri border. There's another location where the farmers are agitating, the sit-in protest, and it has been less talked about, but along with Singhu border, Tikri border is also there. Regarding what is the role of the revolutionary left, right at this point of time, we can actually see there is a sort of solidarity between the electoral left and the far left regarding this particular farmers' protest. Even CPIM has played a very important role and they are very supportive towards what is happening. Maybe they are not the best people to take action in this particular thing, in this particular revolt that is going on, but they have been thoroughly supportive. All India Kisan Sabha is there. Then there is this platform which has all the farmers associations together, which is All India Kisan Sangharsh Coordination Committee. And these organizations, which is an umbrella organization, it has both electoral left and the far left, and all the people are together. They're fighting for the main cause. And that is something which is very important. Even there are a female woman farmers organization like Makam who are fighting alongside with other organizations, and like there is no hierarchical difference that okay, this organization is more important than this organization, or this school of communism is more important, or this school of politics is more important. That is less there. That is not visible, at least. So that is something which is positive, and people can come together in one question. If that happens, that is a very huge positive. And coming to Mark's question, what is the role of Naxalites? As Harshill pointed out, at this point of time, Naxalite has become a very ambiguous term by the government, by the BJP government. So anybody who's a dissenter is been called a Naxalite. An urban Naxal is the term which has been coined. But if we look at the Naxalite, the people who are fighting the real movement right now, they are quite underprivileged. Yes, they have the solidarity, 100% solidarity towards the movement, but they are not in a position to come forward and do something. And also looking at the structure of the movement and how it is going, maybe the kind of role that the far left is playing is good, and it is like something that has been it's an overall support. The people who belong to different schools of politics, they are supporting in their own ways and not
30
fighting
seconds.
amongst each others. So, which is a very huge positive, I would say.
Thank you. Garf?
Thank you, Elizabeth. So I'll go to the first question. In my personal opinion, parliamentary politics in India lags behind. So if anything, a real structural change needs to happen, then we need to move beyond parliamentary politics and the very different parties that they have. So, but for now, during the transitionary phase, there is a desperate need for a revolutionary People's Party. So there is a need for that there, and there is a groundwork already in place. But what is the resources are missing. Public discourse is missing. So we need to work towards that. Until that happens, CPIM and the revolutionary left, they have some role to play, at least to get people onto the point where we can have an honest discussion about it and build a political force from there. For the second question, I think it's been answered pretty much thoroughly. I'll go to the third one about the Naxalites movement. The armies that are fighting Naxalites in the east and northeast in India, you can compare. That's comparable to Palestinian plight and how versus the Israeli occupation in Palestine. That's how Northeast Indians are treated in India. So, but the thing, as Panchali said, that in the public's mind, it has been made so with so much propaganda that the word Naxalite itself means either a terrorist or a murderer or something like that. So I think farmers understand that, Naxalite activists and leaders understand that too. So I'm sure they are in solidarity with each other. Farmers also, many of the farmers activists and farmers union understand northeastern people's struggle and their plight, but they don't come out and say it. Again, it's because of the national discourse. It has been so thoroughly whitewashed or diluted that just saying that word completely is off-putting to the people and pushes you off the track. So they are not directly related, but their struggle is for sure. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So now we're going to go on to the next round of questions. So Kurt, the next three, please.
So we're gonna start with our first question from Rosemary, and she asks, "What are the lessons for the left from this movement?" And then we move to Dinner from Franklin, who asks, "What do you think is the best way for farmers and workers to unite and expand to a national movement or party? Is that happening already?" And then our final question is from Tristan Moreau, who asked, "What political allies do the farmers have in their struggle against the government? Who are willing to help all the way until their demands are met?"
Okay, so each discussant will have up to 5 minutes again, and the speakers will be Harshill, Panchali, Navi, and Garth. Harshill?
Okay, for Rosemary question, the first question, what are the lessons for the left from this movement? I think there are a lot of lessons. First of all, it is that when we try to fight for our cause, it shouldn't just be for our cause. It should extend to other areas as well. I saw that in one of the protests, the farmers actually were fighting for the political prisoners who were sent to jail just because they dissented against the government. So people like Umar Khalid and some lawyers, they had a vigil from them, and they had a photo of them, of all the people who were in the jail, who the BJP put in jail through undemocratic means. They had a picture of all of them, and they were educating everyone about them. And the second thing is that there have been excellent artwork coming out from it. The farmers have been engaging in all kinds of conversation with journalists, and every time a journalist comes and asks them questions, they reply in the most peaceful way and in the most respectful way, in a kind of like no harm intended. We're just asking for our rights, and that is legal. And plus offering food to their enemies. That's like the one of the most symbolic things that has ever happened in India, is that precisely the thing that they're fighting for, food, they're offering it to the government. Supposedly they're their enemies, but it shouldn't be like that. The third question, what political allies do the farmers have? All kinds of urban intellectuals and trade unions, even the Naxalites, the Communist Party of India, the Congress parties to some extent, some of their smaller members, and as we can see, even in the West, in the West, so many Indians as well as foreigners are supporting for them. Trade unions I've already mentioned, and there's so many different kinds of people, different even the nurses at AIMS, one of the biggest hospital in India, decided to strike to show the solidarity for the farmer movement. That's it from me. Thank you.
Sorry, Elizabeth, you're muted.
Sorry about that. The host muted herself. Okay, Panchali?
Coming to the first question, what is the biggest lesson the left movement can learn? I would say intersectionality. As Harshill kindly, correctly pointed out, that this BJP government, if we look at the structure of what they have been doing, it is not that they are against this particular community or this particular religion or anything like that. They are against minority. They have passed this transgender persons bill, which is very derogatory for the transgender people. Like, if I talk about it, it will take a lot of time, so I would not talk about it. So they are against the gender minority. They are against the religious minority, the Muslim people, we can see. And they are against the caste minority. The BJP leaders, if we look at them, they are always making casteist slurs and all that. So the main, we have to understand that the minority community coming together under one umbrella is very important to fight BJP, and intersectionality is very important. As rightly pointed out by Harshill, that the free political prisoners, this kind of slogans were there from the protest sites, where people like Umar Khalid, people like Sharjil, people like Varavara Rao, Stan Swami, and Shoma Shen, all these people, they are either lawyers or poets or social workers who have been pro-people, and they have jailed under UAPA, unlawful UAP, I forgot the term. That is the law by which the government can put somebody into jail for indefinite time without proper trial and all that. So what happens is that if we do not understand that our enemy is one and singular, and if we do not come under one umbrella, so they will divide us with religion, with caste, with profession, with everything. We have to understand that this is our right, this is our fight for right, and that is very important. And coming to the second question, which says that, do you think the best way for farmers or workers to work, unite, and expand to the national movement or party? Yes, the holistic movement is already happening, but the making it directly affect the elections is a little difficult in India, as the electoral structure is different, because there are a lot of people, the working class people, the intellectuals, they take part in different kinds of movements. However, to a great extent, our consent and dissent are the only things that we can do, unless we actually go ahead and fight in the election, and we get ourselves registered for the election and stuff. Of course, there are parties, electoral parties, which are in solidarity with the farmers movements, and they would take things forward. However, somebody who is being a voice or a role model, maybe an individual or a group of people, just getting into the electoral politics is not something that happens so readily. And coming to the third question, which asks that who are the allies? The allies are the communist parties, the communist organizations, the people's organizations, the intellectuals, the working class people, the trade unions, the feminist organizations, the queer organizations. A lot of them are there. The student organizations, any kind of pro-people umbrella, all those are very much there and very much into it and very much in support of the protest. That's all from me.
Thank you, Panchali. Navi?
Hey, I'm just going to touch a little on the first question. So in terms of lessons from the left, I think that some of the great lessons or amazing things that have come out of this movement is, to begin with, that a lot of the groups are not compromising with political parties, and they're actually taking the struggle to the streets and not trying to do it through kind of the electoral system, but really fighting from the ground and creating that sort of movement. Secondly, I think that the unity, again, is just an amazing lesson of how not to be divided, and the new strategies that folks have come up with to kind of prevent the government from using tactics that they have in the past. For example, government has sent people to infiltrate, pretending to be part of the protesters, to create havoc and, make fake kind of showing that these protesters are doing this when it's not actually protesters, it's actually folks in there, or infiltrate to get folks off track and do other things. And so now, this protest is very organized. They're creating communities and kind of safeguarding their own groups, so making sure that if an outsider comes in, are we keeping track of who's in our group, kind of finding folks that are coming in. They've caught cops, right, undercover, that have been coming to kind of get people to drink alcohol or create ruckus or undercover kind of thing. So they're really coming up with all these new strategies that are kind of countering all the things that the government has typically done in the past, to create that fake impression or take people off course or spread kind of division. So that's been great to see, along with kind of what Panchali mentioned that she's been seeing is this community that's been created. It's not just folks coming together, it's literally communities where they're building infrastructure to stay there. There's people are coming together, singing, playing together from different communities. They're creating schools. They're teaching and feeding everyone, whoever's there. It's amazing to see that they're creating the type of society that that we want to see, things that the government isn't even doing, that the community has set up for itself. Also seeing women being at the forefront of this protest is incredible, along with, again, just seeing all the different groups coming together despite religion, caste, and so many different and new leaders. And again, holding people accountable. So I think that's another great one, whether it's politicians, singers, artists, people are not just willing to let anybody come and speak or take a leadership role anymore. Folks are having to prove themselves. And it's amazing to also see the cultural shift that has occurred, the songs that are coming out, just what people are expecting and and how they're behaving differently. Just a new sense of culture and community that's been created has all been fantastic to see. Thanks.
Thank you. Garv?
Thanks, Elizabeth. So the first question, what are lessons for the left from this movement? I think it's been mentioned before, intersectionality. There have been many activists who were jailed. That has nothing to do with the farmers' protest, but farmers are still in solidarity with them. Publicly, they have mentioned that they also would like to see them freed. Also, I'd say self-dependence. For any movement to last, it has to be self-dependent. That's what they have done. The farmers, the protesters, they have built a community, as Navi said. They have got everything they want. They've built infrastructures to last. And it is kind of a message for the future. It's a message for a better future that everyone can get behind. Also, empathy. Just today, during the tractor rally that happened, farmers deliberately planned out their route in a way that would disturb least amount of the people in Delhi. Before this protest, there was when the regional protests were happening, they were conducted in a way and around the schedule of school children. So if there were an exam, they'll skip that day because they don't want children to not be preparing for the exams. So all this stuff they have kept in mind because they understand that it's a fight for. If they want to win this fight, they have to gain trust of the people at large, the majority of the public out there. So that is very important. Again, with empathy, I can say, I think it was mentioned before that they invite people who are opposed to them, opposed to their movement, and they sit down, they have dinner with them. If you meet them, you are not going to go empty stomach, that's for sure. So the hospitality is a priority there. Inclusiveness is a priority. So I think that that is something that will be very useful in the future. For the second question, I think that's already happening with the Union of Farmers and Workers. Most of the unions are currently working together. As I said, there needs to be more of a political framework for them to work in, and there needs to be a revolutionary party that exclusively works for the interests of farmers and workers. That doesn't exist yet, but I'm sure because things are happening on this scale, that would be the natural next step, and I wouldn't be surprised if that's already underway. With political allies, I think it's all been mentioned before, but I'll repeat it again. The general public is a great political ally because they are very sympathetic towards the farmers. People have been volunteering from all over the country. I heard this thing in news that someone from a very different state came to Delhi, and that person is a barber by profession. So he gives out free haircuts, shave, and everything to the farmers who have been there for a while. A lot like that is happening. People are setting up shops over there because they understand these people are here to stay, and they are provided goods at discount, sometimes even free. A lot of NGOs are working there in the community. It's basically a township at this point. Alternate media has been a big help because, as I said, mainstream media has completely ignored these protests. But still, people are hearing about it internationally and nationally. That is mainly because of the alternative digital media that has come out in last decade or so. That has been very important too. Again, parties like CPI, trade unions, other workers are also great allies in this fight for farmers. That's all.
Okay, thank you, Garv. Okay, so we're going to go back to our producer for the last three questions. And because of time constraint this time, each panelist will have up to 4 minutes to answer. And the lineup will be Panchali, Harshill, Navi, and Garv. Okay, Kurt?
So our first question comes from Abby C. She asks, how exactly were these protests so well organized? Do you have any insight on how or why the decision was made to march to and camp inside Delhi for months if needed? Our next question is from Dinner with Franklin. He says, it sounds like many in India have at least a good grounding in Marx. Does that understanding contribute a great deal to their efforts and the efforts of those before them? Very Wise Letter asks, global solidarity with India's farmers' struggle is extremely important for learning lessons and achieving victory in India. It has already forced Justin Trudeau to back away from his good friend Modi. At the same time, as politics is increasingly global, we need a worldwide revolutionary workers' party. Socialist Action and allies seek to build a revolutionary workers' international. Do you agree?
Okay, so you have each up to 4 minutes, and you start, Panchali.
Hi. Yes, this has been this movement. Coming to the first question, yeah. This movement has been thoroughly planned out. It did not sprout out all of a sudden and suddenly some people started working. It did not happen like that. It was planned out and the political organizations were well informed, and the planning was done in a way that the people from the Punjab, Haryana, they would be the first one to join. And it will be problematic and chaotic if farmers from all over the country joins. So some states would stay behind. They would send representatives, and even the people of Punjab and Haryana, not everybody would come. Some people would go back, some people would continue farming, some people would like rotate from this place to that. These all has been properly planned out and chalked out. It was not that one fine morning the farmers started working. It was well planned out with the trade unions and farmers unions and all other political organizations also had an idea of what is going to happen. Coming to the second question, which is from Dinner with Franklin. Yes, people in India do have a strong Marxist understanding, because especially the people from Bengal, from the Northeast, from Kerala, the states which had a strong Marxist holding. For Bengal, if I can say, there was a CPIM, though CPIM is not exactly what we understand that Marxist politics is, more of a reformist, but still it was there in the government for 34 years in West Bengal, as in the state government. And especially in the urban section and in the academia, the understanding, the Marxist understanding, communist understanding, all these are practiced. And the people who are into the youth politics, they are also inclined towards communism and leftism as a whole. And also there are people who are like studying, the people who are interested in politics. They not only the people who study political science, but other people who are interested. So there's this interest of the people towards understanding communism in academia, in activism, in politics, mainstream politics. It is there. And coming to the third question, which Barry asks, yes, I do believe that this is high time we form international allies and stand up for each other, because in the end, the problems of corporatization, of capitalism, with globalization, all this has been whitewashed all over the country. It's not like the first world country and the third world country. Yes, there are differences. There are major differences. There is privilege disparity. But when coming to these global problems, these are very much whitewashed and similar. So in these cases, it's very much important to have a global alliance. I agree. That's all from me.
Thank you, Panchali. Harshill? 4 minutes.
Yeah, that's right. People have a very good understanding of Marx in India, and I think that's because it's not like they have formally read Marx's work. It's just that their being, it lets them to believe in his ideas, and it's not like his ideas are not very personal, so to say. Anybody suffering exploitation by the capitalists and their owners, they will strive for a better society in which they can see everybody equal. So Marx's understanding comes inevitably to them. It's because of the circumstances under their work, and what they see everything. So yes, because they can communicate those ideas to the other people who are not who are comparatively privileged to them. They can explain Marx ideas in their own language, in their own words. Like we see all the time in the villages in India, the people who perform a stage play and musicals, they take Marx's idea and they translate that into a very regional language, a regional language. So so it's very easy for the local villagers to understand them. One of the films, I think it's called Jai Bhim Comrade, it shows this, that how Marx's idea has been adapted in the Indian context, and especially after post-independence era. And to answer Barry's question, yes, of course, it's very important to show international solidarity, because what we are doing, it's not a nationalist movement, it's a class movement, and people all over the world, they should not be connected by their race or nationality, but by their working conditions. So yes, all the workers should get together and show solidarity. The reason these protests were so well organized is because they had 2 months to organize them, October and November. It's because they came to Delhi on November 26th and they had the whole 2 months to plan. Plus, they were relatively privileged also, that they had a little bit of more wealth. The farmers for Punjab is that they can come in, tractors, have the tents, have the food. So, but it's good as because they use their wealth in a very good way to help other farmers. And so some people in Punjab, they continue with their regular farming, while the others are protesting, and they keep switching back and forth. So there's always some presence against the government, and everything is visible. And I believe the government and the farmers associations, they have
30
talked 7
seconds.
times, but unfortunately nothing has come until now. Thank you.
Thank you. Navi?
So for the first question, I can only speak from kind of my experience, what I've seen from my parents are from Punjab. And so at least in terms of the general population and the majority of people, I don't think that Marxism is as well known, because there was a lot of conflict in the past. So like during the 70s and 80s, when the Khalistani movement was happening, there was a lot of conflict with kind of communist parties at the time. And so it did lead to a lot of division amongst groups between religion and communism and those sorts of things. And there was a lot of even killings of the other group. And so since then, there's been kind of a divide. But that's kind of coming back, I feel like, with this movement now, where people are learning to kind of bridge those gaps and work together. So that is a very positive thing that we're seeing from this movement. And now also what we're seeing in the protest is a lot of people reading and a lot of people educating themselves and kind of reading about like leaders like Bhagat Singh and what they're about. And so that's very inspiring to see. So I think this movement will create a lot more awareness and education around the issue, and hopefully bring, like we were saying before, different groups together so that that kind of education and work can continue. In terms of how the protests were so well organized, I just know a little bit of, at least in the beginning, that a lot of the leaders and stuff went to different villages to kind of speak with people directly in their communities. And then from there, like, unions made the decisions to go to Delhi. But what also stands out for me in this movement is that there were occasions where union leaders themselves didn't maybe make a decision to kind of push past a barricade or to keep moving despite kind of police resistance. But the workers themselves or the folks on the ground refused to stay. Like they pushed past and they made those decisions despite maybe union leaders not kind of doing that. So I think a lot of the pressure and a lot of the resistance have come from the ground itself, which is amazing to see. So those are just a couple of my comments on those questions.
Okay, thank you, Navi. Garv?
Thanks, Elizabeth. So for the first question, I think Marx has been part of Indian subconsciousness since the pre-independence era. Like when the modern two of the most prominent Indian figures in history are, among the youth at least, are B.R. Ambedkar and Bhagat Singh. Both of them had Marxist inclinations, and Bhagat Singh openly called himself Marxist-Leninist, while B.R. Ambedkar was influenced by Marx deeply, and his writing was influenced by Marx, but I don't think he ever called himself that. So it is part of Indian subconsciousness for sure, but I don't think people would like to admit that. Because for the reasons already Navi mentioned, that there's a huge history that goes back, and then again there's a propaganda on part of neoliberal capitalist parties. So these labels have become loaded at that point. But I'm sure most of the people would agree with Marxian values as we understand them. These protests were so well organized because people have been practicing that for a long time. Since I think most of you would remember anti-CAA protests that happened last year, the unions, the trade unions, workers, and student unions, they took note. They already had been practicing a lot of protests, how to go in streets and how to stay there for a while, how to agitate and hold government accountable. But there were a lot of things that went wrong. They learned from those and they implemented that, corrected those mistakes this time around. And these protests didn't just come out of nowhere. They have been doing that for about 4 months now. They did that. Farmers protested locally, then on the state level, and then they marched to the capital. So there's a lot of history that goes behind it, and a lot of practice as well. And I agree with Barry that there needs to be international revolutionary workers' party, because I mean, in today's world, at least everything is international, everything is global. Our boundaries, our borders, national borders, just like construct at this point. It's just nonsense. The air we breathe is one, the water, the resources, they're all one. The trade we do with each other, it's one economy, one planet, and everything. So dividing our politics on based of made up boundaries, made up borders, arbitrary lines is it's always been ridiculous. And if we really need to surpass that point where like humanity has to move forward, especially given the threat of climate change, ecological destruction, all that can only be done internationally with global effort. And for that, we need a revolutionary workers' party. There's no other way.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so that's the end of our questions. So a special thanks to Garv and Navi, Harshill, and a very special thanks to Panchali, who gave up their time in the wee hours of the morning to come and speak to us. And I would like to go back to they and ask if she'd like to have the last word here tonight to say if there's something she missed and wanted to tell us. You have 2 minutes if you wish.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth. One thing I would like to add is my experience at Singhu border. Like as Harshill was mentioning and even Garv was mentioning regarding the empathy and hospitality and everything. So while I was there, while initially when I went, of course, because I am from a different state and I am from a different cultural, political background and everything, I was initially a little hesitant regarding how to approach the people. But the finest thing is that I hadn't have to approach. Whenever I had an eye contact with anybody, they smiled and they approached and they're like, where are you from? Why are you here? And what do you think about your movement? And the very first thing they used to say is that if I have had lunch or if I have eaten my food, and there's like the kind of protests in the urban areas that we see is that it's like the political agenda is very highlighted, the political figures are very highlighted, but Singhu border, it was very different. If we talk about praxis, the praxis was showing, like while they were cooking, while they were talking about their childhood or their livelihood, the politics was reflecting, and that is very, very important. And that is something that like moved me very much, that it is like lecturing about praxis is one thing, and like showing praxis in the lifestyle and how it is like it has become a township, as Nidhi has mentioned already. So the people who are cooking food, they are the next moment they are talking about the rights and the politics. So it's not that these people would cook food, these people would talk about politics, or what we see in the urban area is that the women are often pushed into the food department. That is not happening over there. So this kind of intersectionality, comradeship, praxis, it shows that these people are there to stay. These people are there to fight till the end. That's all.
Okay, thank you so very much. And thanks to everybody that spoke, and also to our audience who's watching, and to our producer, Kurt Young. So if you would like to talk to us about joining Socialist Action, write to socialistactioncanada@gmail.com, or just call us 647-98617. That's 647-986-1917. Once again, if you like this show, please subscribe to the Socialist Action YouTube channel. The next essay webcast will be hosted by our Montreal, Quebec branch on Tuesday, January the 12th at 7 p.m. and it's titled The Weaponization of Anti-Semitism, featuring Bruce Katz, co-founder of Palestinian and Jewish Unity, PAJU in Montreal. That will be followed on Thursday, January the 14th, 7 p.m. with COVID-19, The End Game, featuring Daniel Terade with Robbie Mahood and others. For details, just visit www.socialistaction.ca. In the meantime, please stay safe, stay healthy, and be active. Bye for now.